Last video, we stopped at this point where we deployed our application, all right, to our EC2 instance, and we're able to access, all right, our application as we have right here on the screen. Now, the problem with this approach, all right, is the fact that, anytime we come to our app, for example, so if I come to the application and let's say, maybe we make a change, all right, somewhere. Maybe we make a change somewhere. Perhaps we added something here and we want to deploy this application again. All right, we're going to have an issue because, a Docker container is already running, because if you do Docker PS, all right, you already have a container that is running. So if I make a change, all right, to this application as is, and I want to deploy it, then it is going to give me an error because, it container is already running with the same name, with the same ID, with the same port actually, all right, and then there's going to be a problem. Right now, that is actually where Docker Compose, all right, comes into the picture. Now, what we want to learn now in this video is to see how we can actually use Docker Compose, all right, to basically deploy applications so that if we make any change, all right, at any point in time, we can also execute a Docker Compose command within our pipeline that can terminate, all right, the previous environment and then schedule, all right, the new deployment that we want to deploy. So in this video, we're going to be looking at how to write a Docker Compose file, all right, and then use that, all right, to deploy our application instead of just running it as a Docker container, basically. Okay, so let's see how that can be done. Of course, we need to write a Docker Compose file. That's the first thing that we need to do. And it's going to be a very simple, all right, Docker Compose file. It's not going to be something very hard or things like that. It's just going to be something very, very easy, all right, that we can actually understand. So I'm going to create a new file, and then I'm going to call that Docker, all right, compose.yaml, all right, or .yml, basically. All right, so but let's call it a YML. Okay, so Docker compose.yml. So we have our Docker Compose file here created. And of course, on the server already, we have Docker installed, we have Docker Compose installed, because when you install Docker, all right, with the script that we used, that also installs Docker Compose by default. If I come here now and I say, all right, Docker Compose, okay, I can see that I have Docker Compose already, all right, installed on the system. Like I said, the script that we used basically installs Docker Compose and Docker and all right, and other things for us automatically. So that is started. So what we need to do now is to write a Docker Compose file. So now, when you're writing a Docker Compose file, basically you start with service. So what are the services you want to run? So service here basically refers to the container that you want to run, all right, using Docker Compose. And one of the things, or one of the usefulness of Docker Compose basically is that if you have more than one container that you want to start up at the same time, all right, that is actually where Docker Compose comes into the picture. Because with the Docker run command, you can only run one container, or you can only start one container, all right, at a time. But with Docker Compose, if you have different services, all right, basically, for example, now when you have a MongoDB and then you have a Mongo Express, these two containers should be started together, because the Mongo Express is going to connect to the MongoDB and things like that, right? Then you can use Docker Compose to do that, because with Docker Compose, both containers will start together at the same time, and not just at the same time, they will also start together in the same network that the Docker Compose will create, all right, for them. Okay, so we're going to look at network at a later video. Okay, but today what I just want to show us basically is how to write a compose file and how to execute, all right, our applications in Docker Compose instead of using the Docker commands, all right, that we ran in the earlier, all right, or in the last video, basically. So here I'm going to say service. All right, and then I'm going to give my service a name. Basically, I'm going to give my container, all right, a name. So the name I want to give my container basically is, app. All right, that's the name that I want to give to my container. Okay, so I want to give it app, basically. Okay, so here I need to specify the image, all right, of my container. When you start a container will start, all right, using an image, right? So that, because when you talk about Docker, there are 3 stages when it comes to Docker. You have the Docker file, you have the Docker image, and then you have the Docker container. Okay, so the file is what actually produced the image, and then the image, when you execute it or when you run that image, it is what becomes a container, basically. So we want to run an image as a container here, so we need to specify the image we want want to run. Now here you can actually, do something like this, basically, put the registry, of your GitLab repo and all of that. But of course, we're not going to do that. We're actually going to use a variable, all right, for this actually. So here, I'm going to use a variable, all right, and then remember the variable here is going to be different. So it's going to be the $ and then your curly brace, not not bracket, right? It's going to be curly brace, and then I'm going to say DC underscore image, all right, underscore name. Okay, so that's the variable that I want to use. So watch this, and then here I'm going to say, all right, DC underscore, all right, image, all right, underscore tag. Okay. Now, the next thing you need to do when you specify your image is to specify, all right, your ports, basically. Now, what we're doing here basically is the same thing as doing Docker run -d-p 3000, all right, column 3000, all right, and then we specify the image that we want to run, right? So that this is basically what we're also doing, but then we are doing it now, not, all right, executing it, all right, on the terminal as Docker run, but now we're executing it, all right, as Docker compose, basically. So that's the difference here, okay? So here we need to specify the port, and then we say 3000, column 3000, right? So that's the ports that we want to execute. But now, all of these variables that we have here, we need to define them, all right, in our pipeline, basically, okay, in order for this variable to work. So I'm going to go to my pipeline, all right. So let's go over to pipeline right here, and let us go and modify, all right, we need to modify, the pipeline a bit, okay? So we need to do some modifications, all right, to our, pipeline. So here, I'm going to scroll all the way down, right? And, everything is fine actually at this point, but then we need to do a few other things. Now we have a Docker Compose file that we want to execute on our server. So that means we need to copy this file, all right, to the server and then execute this file, all right, on the server. Okay, so that means we need to execute some, secure copy, all right, command. So SCP basically. So SCP is basically a shell protocol that actually helps us to copy a file, all right, from our current location to a specified, all right, location, basically. So I'm going to say SCP, right, and then I'm going to copy this because, I don't want to do any host key checking, basically, right? So I'm going to put that here. All right, and it basically follows the same pattern actually, just more like your SH command. And then here you have to specify a key as well because you're authenticating with your server that you want to copy something on, and then you have to do that. So here I'm going to say /, basically this current directory, there's a file there called docker compose, all right, .yml, make sure the name is correct, that I actually want to copy, okay, and I'm copying that to this server, all right, so this Ubuntu server, all right, okay, so let me grab the IP from here, all right, so grab that IP. So copy that and drop that here. Now remember, you are copying something to a server, right? So you need to specify the location. So where do you want to drop the file, okay? So that's something that you need to also, all right, specify. So here, I'm going to basically specify the home directory of the Ubuntu users. I'm going to say colon, all right, /home, all right, /Ubuntu, okay? So that's where I want to drop, all right, this file, okay? So now that is the first step, all right, to running the script. So now in the before script, we have copied the file. So in the script session, we need to, of course, remove all of these. They serve their purpose, or we need to remove that. Now in the script session, what we need to do now, of course, we're still going to do Docker login because we have to authenticate with the container registry before we can do, all right, any other thing right here. So I'm going to log in, but of course, we don't need this guy again here because we're not doing any Docker run commands, so we're going to remove that. So the next thing we need to do here is basically to do some exports. So I'm going to say exports, all right? So DC underscore image that we defined in the Docker Compose, we need to export it here, all right, like this. So I'm going to say DC export image underscore name, all right, should be equal, all right, to what exactly? So it should be equal, all right, to the so that should be equal to this guy, all right, which is the CI registry image, right? So we're using that, predefined variable, all right, directly. Okay, so that should be equal to this. So let me remove this one. So it should be equal to this. So this is the image name that we're passing in right now. Okay, and then here we are still continuing our command, all right? So we're going to put the double ampersand right here. And then we drop this again. Now remember, we talked about the tag, right? So we're going to export the tag as well. So export, all right, DC underscore image, all right, underscore tag. So basically all of the things that we defined here, all those variables here, all right, we are actually passing in the value, all right, inside of our pipeline right here. Because if you don't do it like this, I mean, it's going to just return, all right, an empty stop. So we're going to put it here and then we say version. Okay, now we're still continuing. So that's the next step. Now, the next step now is to basically execute the Docker Compose command, right? But what we want to do here is to actually, say that perhaps there is any Docker Compose, running, all right, on our system, right? Basically, we want to delete those, configurations and everything before we start up, all right, new containers as well. So just to put some checks right there. So here I'm going to say Docker Compose, all right, down. So Docker Compose down means if there's any Docker Compose, all right, that is running, if there's any Docker Compose handling any container, all right, maybe Docker Compose started a container before and all of that, just basically terminate everything, because Docker Compose down basically means it's going to delete the containers, it's going to delete every resources, all right, that was created in the course, all right, of executing the Docker Compose command. Okay, because you have Docker Compose stop, which basically just stops the container that is running. That's what we want to do. What we want to achieve here is to basically say Docker Compose down, which basically terminates, all right, all the resources that was created by an earlier Docker Compose, all right, up command. Okay, so here I'm going to put the double ampersand again because the command is still ongoing. So I'm going to say Docker Compose now, all right, and then I'm going to say up-d. So basically, what I'm saying here is that this Docker Compose should run, all right, in the background, okay, without populating, all right, my terminal, without being interactive, all right, as well. All right, it's the same thing as saying Docker Compose run -d. So basically, run in a detached mode, right? Just run in the background, okay? So that's what it means. So now, with what we have done, I think we're ready, all right, to go on now and run our pipeline, all right, with this configuration. So it's going to use the Docker Compose file that we have here, all right, to start our container, and it's going to go into the container registry to pull, all right, our image and then run that, all right, on our system. So let's see if we're good to go, all right, with this new configuration using Docker Compose instead of the Docker run, all right, command. Okay, so let's go ahead. And let's do git add first. We have a new file, so we have to do git add, okay? And then we'll do git commit, okay? And then we say Docker Compose, all right, file added, okay? And then we go ahead and we say, all right, git push. Okay then. Now we're pushing to the pipeline, so let's see what happens now, all right? If on point, or perhaps if we're going to get another error. All right, again, so let's see what happens with the new, all right, configuration that we have. So I'm going to pause here, guys. So let's take a look at the pipeline. So the pipeline actually failed. So let's see what actually happened. Why did it fail? Okay, so let's take a look at that. So now look at what you have here. Now you can see here that the actual, the thing actually worked, because the image was pulled, all right. In fact, Docker Compose actually started, creating all the resources that we, want it to create. Okay, but then it says here, response from daemon driver failed programming external connectivity on endpoint Ubuntu app 1 bind for 3000 failed, and it says port is already allocated. Right, so the port is what is already allocated. So let's see what that is. So Docker PS, all right. Oh wow, we have, all right. So here we have a container running. Okay, that was deployed some 27 minutes ago, right? So the previous container that we ran, we didn't delete it. I'm not sure we actually did that. Okay, so let's confirm that, right? Let's confirm if that was deleted or maybe we didn't do something correctly. So let's take a look at the image ID, okay, to confirm, because this is running the 1.0, all right, 0.34. Okay, so let's confirm if actually, so let's go back to build. Okay, from the build phase, let's go to the push image, and let's verify. All right, okay, so the new image actually is 1.0.35, right? So that means we already have a container that was running that we didn't terminate, okay? And the docker compose down command is not going to work here because this container was not created, all right, by docker compose, okay? So the docker compose down command is not going to work. All right. So what do we do basically? So basically we need to stop this container right here. So docker stop. All right. So we can say docker stop. So let's grab the ID of the container and then let's remove that also. Okay. So let's remove that. So remove rm to remove the container. All right, and then if I go here to Docker images, right, I can see that the image was actually pulled. Okay, you can see that the image was pulled, but the image was not able to run because, I mean, there was a container already running, all right, and it's already utilizing that port. I didn't mean it was a different port number on the host that we defined. I mean, it will have actually executed. Okay, but we already have the image here, and then of course you can see that the image here, right, is also right here. So you can see that because we versioned, all right, our build, okay, you can see that, you know, all the images are basically being pulled with their respective, all right, version. Okay, so now let's run this job again and let's see, all right, what we're going to have right now. So if I do docker ps-a, all right, so do I still have any container registry there? All right, so you can see that the Docker Compose container actually was created, okay, but then it was not able to start because, all right, there was already another container, all right, utilizing the port 3000. So that was not, you know, it didn't work. So for, you know, some if I even if we don't delete this, because I mean I wanted us to delete it, but then let's just leave it like that and let's see what happens. So I can actually rerun the build, okay, from here. So if I go back to the deploy job, all right, I can actually rerun the pipeline from here. So I can just say retry, and then that would, you know, execute that particular pipeline, all right, again, that particular job rather, again. Okay, so let's see if this works, all right, at this point in time. Right, I mean, it's still going to use the same image. Now look at that. So you can see here that everything actually worked. So you can see that the docker compose down command that we executed actually removed, all right, that one that we saw here. I mean, I've cleared my screen. So you can see that it actually removed. So all the container that was created by the previous docker compose up command right now was, all right, it was actually removed, and then it created a new one, all right, for us. And you can see that, all right here. So now if I come here and I say docker ps, all right, I can see that this was deployed how many seconds ago? 35 seconds ago, and it's actually using the new image, which is the 1.0.35 image, all right, that we pushed just, you know, recently. Okay, and now if I come back here to deploy or to operate, okay, if I come to operate and I click on environment right here, all right, and I, you know, basically look at that. So you can see that the environment was also deployed just now. You can see it says just now. So if I click on open here, I mean, I can as well see my application. So if I do anything in the pipeline, for example, now if I come here to the pipeline and let's say I change this version to, let's say 1.1, for example, all right, and I come here and I do git, all right, commit. All right, so if I do git commit -am, all right, and I say application, all right, version changed, all right, and then I do git push. Okay, so let's see what happens now. Okay, so now if I do git push now, so let's see what is going to happen, all right, with this now. Okay, so I mean, Docker Compose is what we're using now. So let's see what will happen with Docker Compose, okay, right now. So I'm going to pause my screen here, all right, and then I'll come back once everything is done. Okay, guys, now if you take a look at that, the job actually passed, okay? So let's see what Docker Compose did for us right here. Now look at what it did, okay? So now we didn't have to, all right, go into the server, all right, to delete anything or to stop any container, basically, right? So with the docker compose down command, all right, it basically stopped all of the running containers, removed all of them, and then, all right, basically pulled, all right, the new image for us, So look at that. It pulled a new image from the container registry because I mean the version has changed actually. All right, because I mean we're using dynamic versioning, we're not doing any kind of static, all right, image versioning. Okay, so it pulled a new image, right? You can see that basically doing some extraction here because I mean it's a new image, and then it's created the network again, created a container again, and then the container got started, and of course the job actually passed this time, all right, around. So if I go back here to my deploy and I go to my container registry, all right, I mean, I'm going to see, all right, a new tag, basically 1.1.36. All right, you can see that. So that's the purpose of doing dynamic, all right, versioning. And of course, if I go to operate and I click on environment, all right, I'm going to see my environment again, so which was deployed 1 minute ago. And then if I open it up here, all right, I basically would see, all right, my application is up and running. All right, so now I don't have to go into my server, all right, to delete, all right, any running container with Docker Compose. It basically just does, all right, that job, all right, for us. So thank you so much, guys. All right, I will see you in the next video.